welcome to accounting.
Ooh, after dark.
dark.
After dark. I was born to be in the accounting profession.
Well, this is our highlight, a beautiful accountant.
And the most important, one of my mottos is continuous improvement. Trust your instincts and don't be worried about pushing the envelope.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, go.
Welcome, listeners, to the podcast show Marketing for Tech with Olga. Thanks for tuning in today. And to make sure you don't lose this video, subscribe to my channel. And to provide some background, I'm Olga and I'm a founder and CEO at The Game, an expert on brand management and marketing solutions for B2B tech businesses. Today I have a guest, my dearest friend, Vince Naselli. He's an amazing person, a beautiful accountant. Well, this is our highlight, a beautiful accountant. Well, Vince has been working in finance and accounting management within startups, M&S, privately held corporations. Welcome, Vince.
Thank you, Olga. We're good to be here.
Just a little bit. Yeah, close.
Thanks, Olga. Very nice to be here and it's a pleasure.
Perfect. Well, Vince, I know your current projects and the companies and that you're involved in. So you've been across so many different industries, right? The first question I want to start with is, I'll just provide a quick background. I have asked my LinkedIn connections a question. How do you summarize your business in a crisp elevator pitch? And that's what you said, quote, I say I'm just an accountant. Well, this usually scares 99.9% of the people away. So my question, do you think this is the assumption of that accounting is not fun? It doesn't sound as exciting as, let's say, immersive experience designer? Or why do you think they get scared?
Yeah, good question. So part A of that, I guess my response is accounting is probably the start of a dead giveaway of a conversation to end. So when you say you're an accountant, most people who aren't accountants might be scared off because most people come back to you with some problems and say, my accountant gives me this and my accountant tells me this. So the reason why I guess it kind of is a bit of a scares 99.9% of people away is for that given reason. However, what does tend to happen is it actually gets people to get a little bit more intrigued because then they open up a can of worms and tell me all about their individual experiences and pretty much what their problems are and what their ongoing problems. So then the actual pitch of an accountant becomes a little bit more exciting. So at the end of the day, it's a conversation starter and also a dead, or it kind of also kills the conversation. Is it a killer of a conversation? But when you start opening up and explaining what you do and giving them more than just the basics, I will tell you that people are engaged and then it's hard to actually stop. So
it is because it's from the first sentence, it sounds like, oh, accounting. So, numbers are numbers,
Yes.
numbers are numbers. It doesn't matter what industry you're involved in, but numbers are numbers. When you say something really, trendy, there's buzzing words and they're like, oh my God, what are you doing? Tell me more. When you count, it's like, oh yeah, cool. Maybe the next question is going to be like, what industry or what company?
Yes.
And as you said, as soon as you started maybe like having this conversation with them, they provide you more details and they get more interested because they see they can get different insights.
Yes, and look, I guess each individual is different, and the accounting profession, we have all different sectors, right? You have your traditional, and I guess we might touch on a bit of the background of myself a bit later on, but just in the terms of what we've got currently, you've got the traditional accountant and then you've got the more advanced who helps in those mergers and acquisitions and startups that you just explained earlier. So when I start discussing all the various sectors that I've been involved in, which I'd like to say, I'm proud to say that I've probably touched every single sector, including the Web3 space and the high tech. So there's not too many, I guess, people that I know in a similar field that has that really traditional years of and decades, in my case, of experience. But at the same time, the innovative and high tech way of looking at things, even in my sector. So the thing for me and the experiences that I've had is when I do tell people with my opening sentence, I am an accountant, it does kind of go like a bit of the conversation dies in a sense. But then when I explained, however, I do startups, mergers, acquisitions, work for publicly and private companies, that's when their ears tend to prick up and their eyes open up. And that's when I start going into a lot of detail, which either attracts the individual or the group, which I like to think that it's done it for a long time in my career, hence I'm here at this point in my life. And at the same time, they learn so much at that point that they want to engage further. And that's when, you know, conversations go into a bit more deep and detailed experiences. And that's what it's all about for me. It's the experiences that I share with them, which they've all had a very similar experience, but don't know how to, I guess, articulate it and how to relate it back to 101 accounting, which is a very complex area.
Yes.
So,
but this is what is actually leading me to the next question, because as I see you, Vince, you are a great networker. So it's,
thank you.
And sometimes it probably can be quite odd for some people when you see two like opposite words in one sentence, accountant and a networker.
Yeah.
You know, the assumption can be different. You know, the accountant, they're working in a dark room, similar to the IT software developers. They work with numbers. It's not maybe their strength to be a great communicator, a great networker. So, and this is quite phenomenal mix, I would say, for lots of people and for me as well, because trust me, I know some accountants.
Yes.
And maybe like 10% of them, they will be great in communications and networking, and the rest of them will be just good people and they're great in what they're doing. How would you explain this phenomenal mix in your personality?
Well, Olga, that's a huge compliment. So thank you. I'd actually use the word unique, phenomenal from my point of view. It's because I know so many phenomenal people, and I feel a little bit humble to be put in that same category.
My God! But open your own phenomenal category. Let's.
Gotcha. Well. To answer the question is this. As growing up, even before I started the industry, which I started very young, I have to say, and I was always able to, again, be able to voice my opinion no matter in which, no matter which room or community environment I found myself in. And that was the upbringing of my leadership qualities. How I've been able to bring the two together is because I've had great mentors and great people around me who work from an industry other than accounting. And I've also been very, very fortunate to be at the right place at the right time, but also probably built my own luck. And that being said, I've been around people who have taught me how to make it simple. Because the accounting profession does get very complex, and as accountants in an industry, we can get bogged down in our own ways of thinking and not stop to think about how to explain something very simple, like walking down the street and someone asking you a simple question. Accountants make it very complex. Therefore, the ability that I know from a technical standpoint, but also the fortunate and abilities and experiences that I've had around folks who have taught me both in that corporate, but more in that startup, in the startup side of businesses, has allowed me to give that mix of both the uniqueness of networking, explaining something to someone simple in accounting, but also going into technicalities of the accounting profession, which I then like to think that I have a skill set in my own profession with my own colleagues. And bringing that together makes me, guess, who I am and what I'm doing, and thanking you for that wonderful kind of I guess that quality.
Well, I've just highlighted one of your I would say not personality. Sounds like you have a multiple.
No. But key attributes. Key
attributes.
Yeah.
And that's what you said about this accounting. Sometimes it can be like really, really complicated because it sounds really familiar to me. Same about tech.
Yeah.
When you go to a company or individual and trying to explain, like some of my clients, they try to explain what they do, it gets just more complicated with every word they say.
Yes.
And it has to be a really simple pitch, about like just put it like in super simple terms, because as well as accounting can go into I would say
a deep sea.
A deep sea. I was going to say a black hole.
Yeah. No. I was going to say the rabbit hole, but the rabbit hole gets used a lot. But it's you can get caught in the details.
Exactly. And you can be super specific as a professional, and person get confused about like, oh my God, I don't understand. For example, me, it's not my strength, numbers and accounting. So that's why I have an accountant who looks after my numbers,
business,
my business, the financial side of my business.
Yes.
And this is where you need a professional, because it's not just like your expenses and your income.
No.
It's way more than that. And to be smart about what you do and how you manage your finance, not the personal finance and the business as well. So like both.
Yes.
Super, super important.
Yes, and totally agree. and this is one of the most important things that I learned growing up very, very early in my career. And I thank the mentors around me who guided me in this. And it's about how do you understand what the customer really wants?
Mm-hmm.
And in speaking on behalf of what I do and nothing more than that, and again, the old saying is we don't give out financial advice. Well, we do. And we do it because we like to think that we are professionals in the space, and we've done the educations and the studies and et cetera to get to that point.
Mm-hmm.
What is very, very important, what I was taught, like I said, early on in my career, is to first stop and listen to what the client and what the folks who come to you want. That's the number one thing. Because when you're dealing in this industry that I'm part of and been part of for a long, long time, going into the third decade now, is that there might be a problem already that they're coming to, or alternatively, they've got a question where they already want to hear the answer.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why the listening skill that we've all learned from our very first day that we were born on this earth is important to use in this profession and with clients, is to listen to what they have to say and not to make an assumption or not to even provide an answer on the spot until you have the ability to further, analyze and research their individual circumstances. It is only then after you've kind of done one of those many steps that I have in my playbook, let's call it, that then you can start engaging with that client. It is sometimes in the accounting profession that we all want to say yes. But unfortunately, sometimes you have to say no, because it is a different, experience that this individual, the client, is having than you've never experienced yourself. And that's super important. So back to that, bringing it back to that question, is the listening skills is quite important to have earlier on in anyone's career, and in particular in our industry.
And I think in communicating back as well, just
very important.
Just explain it, and just to make sure business owner or individual and the business owner, individual, the same person.
Yeah.
I mean, the business or just individual or the family or office, they understand what's going on and
Yeah.
what risks they have and how they can overcome and what options they have.
Yes.
So it's
Yeah.
really, really important to communicate it back. So just
Yes. But you made a good point too, Olga, and I'll say this in that all businesses are different, and no matter how you like to think that they are not, they are, and industries are the same, but businesses are different. And I'll explain to you what I mean.
Very good point.
Yeah, and it's and this is what I mean. I can walk in a corporate business that's got, thousands and thousands and thousands of employees globally, but the person who's based in the Southeast Asian market is very different to that person that's based in the European market. But it's the same, it's the same company, but it's just a different way how you deal with things. And in the accounting profession, what I do really like about the accounting profession, why I guess I lean towards this industry in a very, very young age and earlier on in my career, is because accounting 101 is the same across the world, especially with the international accounting standards, which I won't go into because that's for a more technical kind of conversation. However, what I do love about this profession, yes, love, it's a powerful word, but I do love about this profession and why I've been passionate about it from day one and even to this very, very minute that I'm talking about it, as you can probably hear in my voice, and when you hear me talking out to other industries and also other communities and environments, is that there is the basic fundamentals. And accounting is always about your debits and credits, which is all around the world, but obviously, the naming convention and the translations is slightly different. But the concept and the fundamentals are always the same. But the business and the community or the companies can be different even in the industry. So that's very important. So you've got a structure that you've got the basics that are fundamentally the same around the world, and no matter if it's privately, public, startup, mergers, acquisitions, the sector of energy, tech, or even government, it's all the same from an accounting fundamentals, but the basics, or not the basics, but the environment of the business might change. And that's where it's important to be able to be adaptable to change and to articulate to the individuals and your stakeholders.
That's what actually you mentioned at the beginning. So you have dealt with lots of different companies, and you probably been involved in almost every single industry or sector.
Yes.
How have you ended up being in Web3?
Yes.
Gaming and NFT. It's because it is different, and we're still trying, even the people being in the community still trying to get used to what's going on and all the changes are happening.
Yes.
So how?
Good question. I still ask myself how. But the truth be told is this. Unlike my many, many great friends and colleagues in the industry who have worked for companies for nearly up to 30 years, and there are people right at this stage working in the banking and finance sector. I got in this industry, and it's a bit of a 360 even for myself, in the sense that I started off so my background is pure accounting 101, but I also delved in computer programming and some others, which is probably was a bit of a secret, but now it's out there if this comes through. But I have first and foremost accounting 101. To answer the question, I started off in the industry working in the corporate world of transport and telecommunications, but then halfway through my career, I ended up getting an opportunity to work in startups and mergers and acquisitions, and that's that was in my second parts. In the second stage, I'll put in 3 stages: first 10 years, the second 20, next 10 years after that, and where we are now, going into my next third decade. And basically, I think for me, when I started in the mergers and acquisitions, started giving me that taste for how to look at innovative, futuristic, and beyond the scope of what your traditional accountant is. But at the same time, opening up a few other little businesses along the way, and also being part of some pretty big opportunities. And again, just whether it's sliding doors or whether it was actually something beyond what we see today that guided me there, I landed in this position. It gave me a taste for a few things. And even in my traditional roles that I had, I was always innovative. I was always thinking outside the box or the circle. I was always outside of the scope of what your traditional accountant. And what I mean by that is when accountants were doing bookkeeping and closing of the books and month ends, I was doing that traditional part of my work, but I was always looking at the innovative and adding the value of how do I do something that I don't quite enjoy as much and is a repetitive month end, year end, day in, day out process / task, and how do I automate that? Now, it's as simple as even doing special Excel spreadsheets that we all love, but I look beyond that. I actually started involving some other big things, and one of my experiences that I'm proud to say is I helped a very long and laborious process of doing a budget / forecasting for a company, which will remain anonymous, but I thought there's something more advanced to this. There's more value adding that we as an organisation, and it was a large organisation, that we can give to the organisation as accountants rather than just doing these spreadsheets over and over again. To cut the story short, I started designing a web-based budgeting tool, and therefore working with the computer programmers. And so that gave me a taste, again, of innovative.
Have you ever told me that? I don't remember.
No.
I don't think so.
No, we haven't.
No,
we haven't. And I don't really have a lot of that detail, publicly announced, because there's a lot of things that I've done that relate to very similar topic and subject headed to what I'm saying. But interesting enough, you just do it. And that's something that I will look back at later in my career when I'm probably retired, and that's probably hopefully for another 50 odd years. But what I'm trying to say is you don't look at it at the time, you just do it and you just move on and to get it accomplished. And you look back when your career is over, which is what my mentors have told me. And this is why I can say what I'm saying, not because I've lived there yet, and I like to think that's a long way away, but due to the fact that my mentors, who are a lot more senior than what I am right now, but also some who've passed and are not longer with us, to discuss and say to me, when you're sitting back and relaxing and looking at your fruits of your labour and you feel that you've done a great job, you then realise what you did and how much of a pivotal move that was at the time. But when you did it, you just didn't know. Long-winded story to get back to the point. That's how I got into this tech space. I went through was just to do it. I guess the old Nike mentality, just branding, just do it. And that's been a trendsetter for me for many, many, many years throughout my career, that you just have to do it. And sometimes we look and over-analyse things, but it's okay to give it a go. And if it doesn't work the first time, the second time or the third time, you like to think by the fourth time you know what you're on about. And the most important, one of my mottos is continuous improvement. I started to familiarise myself with the sectors that was missing the information, if that makes sense. So I reverse engineered it. And I guess this was where my other analytical skill sets come into play. I looked at what was missing, and so I questioned and I pushed the benchmark of that. And what I tended to do was let people who are very good at the skill sets that they, let them go in their path. But then I started familiarising and being actually connected with people in my industry, and started to realise that there were a lot of new innovative guys coming through the industry that weren't as, I guess, mature as myself, but they showed me a level of skill sets that I didn't have because they were in the industry much sooner than I was. But then I complemented it by pushing that envelope, I guess, by questioning the traditions that we learned from 101 when I first started is still relevant to today. So the processes is involving myself with what I knew, but also not being afraid to say that you didn't know what being honest and admit that you didn't know certain things, and together made a good formula. And this is where this whole industry that I'm particularly part of and passionate, as I've always said, has probably got a long way to go. And that is that we need to bring the boardroom politics, or probably the boardroom discussions, from the traditional industry with the new innovative, and bring them together. You sometimes, as an accountant in the traditional Web 2 space, are only limited by a certain amount of levels that you can go to. For example, if you're not sitting at the top of the mountain as an accountant, you may not be aware of all the transactions happening around you. Whereas in Web 3, you can be the person who just is sitting there in a junior role, or the CFO or the COO, and can see that transaction through the blockchain, no matter where you sit on that food chain.
Good. Yes.
And therefore creates a bit of a credibility issue. But I guess also touches the other point, which is another issue, is the change, or what I like to say, transformational change. How do you bring the people from the old way, from looking at things for many, many years and being, guided through all their studies and all their senior and senior studies, to something that is very, very new, but also makes sense? Show me a general ledger and show me a transaction. Here it is through using X, Y, Z technology, and there it is, and you can find it in 3 or 4 seconds, depending on your web and your Wi-Fi connections. But this is the transformational change that is very critical and important in this industry that I represent, the industry that I represent.
And do you think it's going to take a while to bring the traditional, I would say old school, maybe traditional finance, to bring them on board with, at least to consider, this, and to look at this transformational change and how they can implement in their own industry? Roughly,
Look, so if you asked me this question 2 odd years ago, nearly 3 years ago, my answer would be different to what I'm going to say right now.
Okay.
So it's probably a little bit of a controversial conversation. But on a serious note, 3 years ago I would have said, yes, it's going to take a while. It's going to take a long time. Today, I say no. And I'll explain to you why I answer this in this very different way. The technology is so fast, no matter where you sit, within which sector, whether it's marketing, whether it's finance, whether it's computer software, legal, with smart contracts that we didn't even touch on, and we haven't even touched on, together with some other really out there technologies in this space. The speed at which it's happening at is going to make the teachings and the transformation quicker. And that's because if the individual is willing to learn and willing to put the effort, like anything that you do in your business or your day-to-day life, and you choose to go down that path to wanting to roll up the sleeves and wanting to pick up a new challenge in your life on top of the every other business and busy life that we live, then things are going to move quicker for you. If you sit in the lane that's always going to be just business as usual, don't want to challenge yourself, don't want to pick up a new book and learn something.
Just follow the flow.
Follow the flow, but the flow sometimes works for those individuals.
Yes.
It's more about, if you want to move into this space that we're fortunate to be a part of, but also helping to revolutionize and be innovative in this space and bring it into the industries that we're traditionally belong to, then there's nothing stopping you. And there is that much information globally that you can actually do that pretty much right now. And I'd like to finish by this kind of answer on this particular question. It is people like you and I who will help revolutionize the old traditional ways of things that we grew up doing into this new chapter of our lives. So people like us who are trying to do new things and helping out and being, I guess, the frontier. Let's say the old Robinson Crusoes, or these new, entrepreneurs, which we all know all about them and stuff that we see all plastered on X and YouTube and TikTok and et cetera, et cetera. But it's those people who are changing the way we learn period.
Right. Okay. So we're going back to yourself as an accountant, and you know
Yes.
what? I will say the saying I know, and that's what we'll discuss prior.
Yes.
And then I will just reward the question slightly.
Yes.
So the saying I know, and I quite agree with that because one of the good friend of mine, she's an accountant, and like I cannot see her in a different role, and she's accountant by birth, I would say. The accountants are not made; they are born to be accountant. However, the question is, are accountants born to be accountant or grow into?
Yeah, great. It's
So this is slightly different, but
Yes,
I
yeah.
have an experience where this, oh my God, she was born to be an accountant.
yes. I'm going to sit on the fence and be a bit. Again, I guess this might be controversial. So me personally, so I'm going to talk
Yep.
about me personally,
Absolutely,
and
yeah.
then I'll talk about what I've seen across the board. And this is only due to the fact that I've been able to see this through my career. Because when I first started out, so the answer to my particular experience is I was born to be in the accounting profession. And there is footage of me as a very, very young child who has already showed the traits of being an accountant. And again, we will leave that for another day. But I was already doing, and this is really, really cute for some people to say, but also very, very, I guess, for myself, it showed a true indication of what I wanted to do, even as a young child in my professional world. And I was already doing accounting 101, which I didn't even know probably at the age of 5 or 6. And that was by collecting some of the pocket money that I was given through family members and counting and doing little spreadsheets on a piece of paper, like putting in the dollars and notes. And back then, I'll probably show my age, but we had $2 notes and $1 notes, and that's how young I was. And I've still got those to this day. And that's a very, very important token and a very, very important memory for me as to why I got into this whole profession. It's about just knowing that I was organised, structured. Some people might disagree with that, but I'm organised and structured, but also knew that there was an outcome. If you had $1 plus $1 equals $2, that's it. No, nothing more and nothing less. So I was born to become an accountant. As I got through my even senior studies in high school, I also was participating in some larger, competitions and whatnot through the schooling system. And still through those particular curriculum vitae and curriculum programs, I was always leaning towards accounting 101. In particular, I did do a particular test and what they call a career progression test to see what level of detail what areas of studies you would most likely fall into. And sure enough, the top 3 was accounting, economics, and international business, which
pretty much these days covers sums up. Yes, exactly.
Sums up exactly where I am today. Doing. Further to that, when I became a junior, when I was a young adult, I also participated in so many other different various programs and other certain young talks and young leaders programs. And sure enough, there is footage of me walking into a particular largish room in front of some very, very significant delegates and other significant VIPs. And I told them exactly what I was going to be doing when I was at the age of 19 then to what I'm currently doing today. So I was born. The controversial bit is I know people now at the senior level, even CFOs of some very, very large companies, both here and overseas, more so overseas, that they didn't become accountants at the age of 21, 22, 23, gone through that program, gone through that syllabus that I did to get to where I am. They were computer engineers. They were economists. They were even lawyers
Well, economists are quite close, to be honest.
Very close, very close,
yeah.
but
I know what
quite pure in
Is that what
economics and working more on the financial or the economic modelling, which is kind of where they moved into later on into the accounting, I guess, CFO role, if we just call it that. But one was a legal barrister who was practicing for a very, very long time, who later on in their I think it was back then was probably closer to their 30s, made a career move from Australia over to the UK. And just by choice, through their partner at the time, they ended up going into a banking and finance sector and worked their way up, and then ended up doing their accounting studies later on. So to answer the question, for me, I was born, but you can grow into an accountant. And the other thing to add on to this is that based on the fact that there's so much technology, but because we are able to build a business overnight without all the traditional skill sets that we used to have, and I'll call it the bricks and mortar, or being born into that family because the fruit shop was there because your parents started the fruit shop, or the cafe was started up because your parents started that up, and you're the second or third generation, which is another area that I look into from the high net worth families and the family offices that I work for. But when you look at these type of, I guess, industries, then you look at that and also think, well, I was there to be the construction worker to go and build the bricks and mortar for that business, but I turned into the accountant because there might have not been that accountant in that position at the time, but then you have an interest because you've got the money coming in, you're a business entrepreneur, you've got to learn how to operate the cash flow of a business. You also need to understand what an ABN in Australia that is, or a registered company in the allocated or the region that you're working in. And therefore, you naturally do become a bit of an accountant, not by choice, but by falling into that.
Oh, tell me about that.
Because you need to be aware of it.
You need to be.
And that's one of the things that I did develop in another company that I'm very proud of. And again, one of those little legacy kind of trademarks that are left for particular companies. And I'm actually about to do this pretty soon for a potential project in 2024, and that is a commercial awareness program. And that's grabbing everyone from all different all different divisions of the business and teaching them just certain things for what they need. So, for example, level 1 might be just an introductory in knowing how a cash flow works. Level 2 will be how does a cash flow balance sheet, profit and loss work. And then level 3 would be all of those below, plus how to set up registering a company, how to do other bits and pieces. So, long-winded way of going back into the old question, I was born, but at the same time, you grow into it.
You grow into it.
And hang on, I forgot the question. It's sitting in my head and I forgot. Oh my God.
So, and now it's probably a quite marketing or branding question related because, well, this is the name of the podcast.
Yes.
How your personal brand helped you with doing and getting into where you are right now. So,
yes.
Because you have been building your brand.
Yes.
And not being like sitting somewhere in a dark room. We already identified that, a great networker. So how did personal branding help you to get to where you are right now?
Yes.
And also how it is helping your company's brand, your personal brand helping your company's brand.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I know it's a cliche. It's a great question because I'm thinking about it in 300 different ways as we're just discussing it right now.
Let's consider 2.
2, that's right.
Pick the best 2.
Again, I'm only speaking not on the fact of representing the industry that I represent, but me in particular. And perhaps you can say this, as I said, after 30 years of being in this industry. But my personal branding, I look at myself in the mirror and make a very, very important decision every single day when I get up and put my feet on the ground. And I touched on this bit earlier. I have the same passion and drive that I had when I first started in this sector. And that drive is to be ethical, be respectful to myself, and always seeing every single day that I discuss about this, but also from a professional and personal level, how much value do I add to the individual or to the group that I'm referring to or speaking to at the time. So how do I work on my branding is that if I feel that I'm being self-respectful to myself, so I'm being respectful to myself, and also making sure that every single thing that I do with the passion that I do and with the integrity that I have, that will resonate with the rest of the people that I'm involved with. Now, this is another little interesting conversation that perhaps the person, Vincenzo or Vince, from many, many years ago, 10 or so years ago, may have said something differently. Because I always believe that sometimes you need to always say yes to your clients, to whether they're your internal clients or external clients. And therefore, that could sometimes differentiate my answers to what I would really think was integrity and credibility, which was always a paramount in the forefront of my mind, but also at the same time a little bit, I guess, reserved, I should say, to not tell them everything that my full recommendation and advice and advisory and consultancy and just advice. And that was because of the fact that I was usually the youngest person in the room, surrounded by the most mature business people in that sector, and thinking that my answers were probably not the right answers for the questions that I was given. And second of all, more importantly, probably because I didn't have the confidence enough to try and tell people who had probably been working for 30 odd years and had run the business up to the third, fourth generation in some cases, that their ideas or their answers were not correct.
Yeah.
And that's just based on the maturity level. So back to my branding. My branding has become very powerful for me because first and foremost, I ask myself this question: would I do it with my own money? Would I do it with my own time? Would I do it with my own resources? And when you start asking that question of yourself, whether you work for someone or whether it's for your own company, you start to look at things differently. And that's what I think that what differentiates me is that I've had to walk away from some very lucrative contracts, not because of anything other than the fact that I could not sit there because I didn't have the right answers for the people that they needed to be serviced, or for the company. Let's just put it simply, for the company. Not because I didn't want to have the answers, is because I wasn't in the right skill. I didn't have the right skill sets, and I couldn't deliver the results that I wanted to with the resources that I was given. And so that's important. And that's a very difficult conversation and a very difficult decision to make personally.
Absolutely.
And on behalf of the company. So that kind of brings it all together. If your personal branding has ticked off I guess I've got a few more other qualities that I won't, or check boxes that I won't. Obviously, they're my own personal kind of reflections. And obviously, people that know me will know these in depth and in detail. But if I can tick those 5 boxes and be very proud that I've ticked them with the integrity and the honesty and the responsibility and all the other things that I hold very valuable to myself, then I know that if I bring that into any organisation, it's going to be a successful outcome, even though the results will not be the results that the client wants. And that's a very, very important.
It is.
It will be a successful outcome, even if the ideas and the results that the client wants is not the same.
It's not the same. And it makes you a really good advisor. When you, when you consider and thinking about and asking yourself the question, like, would do that with your own finance, with your own money, if you consider and asking yourself that question, I think this is it makes you a really, really, really good advisor and consultant
That's
and the
right.
financial
And
advisor.
that's another part of me. You know, I'm a part of I've been involved in the Institute of Management Consultants and a lot of other bodies and stuff. So that's another thing. You know, the part of the branding, I guess this is related, is you don't just pigeonhole yourself. For myself, this is again speaking on behalf of myself, and hopefully this could give some kind of insight and some ideas to some other people listening today on this podcast. Is that sometimes the industry that you're part of is not necessarily where you need to box yourself into. And what I mean by that is if you're part of the renewable energy sector, but you're also part of the blockchain or the Web3 sector, and maybe you're not even part of it, you just got an interest, and maybe you're in a sporting association, which I've been very fortunate to have some kind of dealings through my career, I should say. You start integrating some of these things together and it starts showing you a bit of a different perspective. But I'm also saying that that's not just the answer, because some people are very comfortable running in that lane. For example, I have friends who have been in the banking and industry sector all their lives. They don't want to move out of it. They don't care to learn anything else, but they listen to what is happening, but they don't want to go and take that extra step. Whereas my branding is, I feel I'm a jack of all trades, as they say, but maybe a master of none, or maybe a master of a few. And if I maintain those few, that's very good for me and my future career and my future progression. But the truth, and that's a bit of a tongue in cheek, but the facts are, I really like to think that I have the skill sets and the brand that is very, very different to your traditional CFOs and traditional corporate executives and senior financial executive, but it complements a lot of industries and a lot of businesses that are looking for someone like me.
And it builds trust. They see in you, so they already trust. They start building a trust about your brand, about the company you're actually running, representing the company you're representing, which is actually the marketing and personal branding. They work really closely, especially in the small business, in entrepreneurship, startup world, because you don't have this thousand employees. And sometimes when you know the company, but you have no idea who the founder is, you have no idea who's CEO, and they work differently, and it's fine. But when you're representing a small business, SME or startup, or just being like a solopreneur, it is really important when you build this trust, when you through personal branding, it actually builds a trust in the services you provide or products you build in the company.
Absolutely.
So it's ended up, it's really, really well connected.
Yes.
And finance, especially because people will give you money. They trust you with the money. Let's say that. Like, it's as simple as it.
Totally. 100. I'm going to say short answer, yes, and 100% agree. And this is an experience that I share with lots of my clients and also with some, lots of people who ask me sometimes certain personal questions, because finances hits your bottom pocket, no matter whatever, whether it's in the form of a dollar note, whether it's a credit card transaction, whether it's the crypto space that we're involved, anything that deals with the bottom pocket, or the hip pocket, we should say, is an emotional discussion. And to your point, 100%, I go into certain businesses and certain, individual, circumstances sometimes, even in big corporations, that you're privileged to know a lot of information. And it's information that is personal, it is emotional, and your decision-making as a senior finance person can change the way not only that individual moves to the next level of their lives, but all those that they're associated with, their families. And hence, back to my comment, would you do it with your own money? And if the answer is no, then don't ever consider or advise businesses to do it.
Exactly.
Complete opposite. So you've got to, as we say, practice what you preach. Back to that, but the point is, the whole fact that we're privileged to be in this position and that's what I say. It's very important. You're privileged to be in this position. Yes, you worked a long, long way to get there, and you've gone through. And let me tell you, the individual roller coasters that you go through is tremendous. You have some days, because when things don't work out, the accountants are the first to be called in to a room, and they're probably the last to leave a room. I have a saying.
Where is the money, Vince?
Well, this is the thing. This is the thing, and this is another thing about my branding. To talk about branding, and what makes me unique is, I could honestly put my hand on my heart, and I am, and over probably the mic too, but I can honestly put my hand on my heart and say that through all my life as an accountant, there's nothing that I'm not seen before. And that is both good and bad. And that makes me who I am, and why I think I add so much value to organisations, because as hard as it is, I have been called in to some organisations and some companies to make the difficult decisions that the senior board of directors, whether you call it the board of directors or the senior management level, or the executive management level, I should say, or even, which is even harder, the founders of the company who are passing the baton on to the second and third generations. I've had to sometimes make the decisions on their behalf to, that is not always favourable.
Yes.
And this takes a particular individual to be able to do it. B, requires a great networker, but also being able to communicate that and articulate that. And number 3 is have enough experience to know how to manage and also implement that. Now, it sounds a little bit doom and gloom, but the flip side of that is when you do implement that thing about my decisions is not always the outcomes that the owners want. This is where I relate it to the thing.
Yep.
It probably is not the outcome that they wanted, but my decision-making based on the years and years and decades of experience that I have actually brought them through a better part of their life and got them through another stage of their careers or their business timeline that they never saw coming, because the other multiple industries of experience that I've had and bringing those experiences from all the different various sectors have been able to guide them through a sector that is completely different from where they're currently in. And the point being is that's what experience can't buy.
Can't buy. Exactly.
So,
you can, you can take the ideas from the person, but you can take the work they did, but you can't take the experience away. So it can't be stolen. That's what I'm saying.
No.
And your experience, it's just unique as everyone else's experience. So that's what you have been working on through your career, through your journey. That's your experience and the way you're thinking, and it's a massive set of different skills and experience and
yes,
expertise.
And again, I'm humble, and maybe one day, as I said earlier, I'd like to think that one day I'll reflect on it, and because there's a lot happening even while I'm talking today, that I've built over the years that one day will formulate into something that will, resonate in some. I guess some teachings and learnings, because the accounting profession is that, but it's the individual who brings that flair and something different. And why not share it?
Exactly.
Knowledge sharing. Why not continuous improvements? Why let that individual or that organisation or that company or that government department or that private sector go through a really go through a very challenging going through a challenging experience when you know the answers. That's what something is different. In the accounting profession has also been something where you do your work and you just do it. But you want to share it, but don't share it with the fact that you want a large return on investment on it. Sometimes you share it because even if you don't get a final, financial remuneration for There is a particular goodwill that you give to those individuals, that the remuneration will come back to you in threefolds and tenfolds and etc. And that's what was guided in my early career from my mentors. Sometimes in life, you don't walk in the room and saying a yes to the biggest offer that you've got, because that biggest offer that you got is probably 5 years away, by saying no and coming back again in 4 years.
Yes.
And that's a real life experience. I've turned down something that ended up becoming one of the most successful outcomes for me, because it just was the right time.
Right time.
And I had the right team behind me who guided me through what I needed to achieve.
A final question for today. So, what advice would you give to emerging, aspiring accountants if they want, like just in one sentence, what advice would you give them?
One sentence.
Okay, make it two.
No, one. I've got many sentences, but trust your instincts and trust your instincts, and don't be worried about pushing the envelope. And in that, what I mean is, you will go through your career listening to a lot of advice from people that are more senior than you, but it's okay to question what they're questioning.
Exactly.
And so trust your instincts. And I guess the other most important lesson is always to put your ear to the ground and listen.
Beautiful.
Because you'll get a lot of your answers by listening.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Vince, for joining my podcast. There was great conversation, and there are a few things that I learned and heard for the first time.
Yeah.
So you had some secrets?
No, actually, no, they're not secrets. It's just
we'll never discuss. We'll never discuss that.
Now, look, Olga, thank you so much. And look, this is, again, one of those things that we don't get an opportunity too much in the accounting profession to talk about this type of open mic type conversation in a podcast. So thank you for that. And, I hope you learnt a few things from me that you didn't, but I've also learnt a few things from yourself too. And your branding and what you're doing in the space is fantastic. And, and I commend you, and I'm a big supporter. Second to that is also the profession that I am in is something that I've got passion for, and I continue to have passion, and I will definitely, see myself for the next 5, 10, 15 years and beyond. I like to think still in this capacity. And what will happen, whether transpiring to Web 3 or the Web 4 or the Web 5, you'll be sure to know that I'll be there, probably flying the flag for us accountants and the finance and accounting industry.
Well, I will see you there then.
Big thank you for you guys listening to today's podcast. If there is anything that you're interested in or liked, please push the like button down the bottom, and also subscribe to Olga's B-Gain company. Lots of insights and lots more things to learn about, and look forward to getting any feedback, any questions, and participating in many more in the future. So thank you.
Thanks, Vince, and I will see you next time. We'll definitely have a lot to talk about.
Yeah, thank you.
Perfect.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Cut.
No. And subscribe to the channel.
And subscribe at the end.
Yeah, that's fine. No, that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
That's okay. And subscribe to the
No,
channel.
but I'll get a blooper.
I will put it as a blooper.